With the Black Ops 7 Zombies beta well and truly over and well over 12 hours of playtime under my belt, I think it's time we give a final review and talk about everything I liked and disliked about the Black Ops 7 Zombies beta, share a ton of my feedback, and also get a ton of feedback hopefully from you in the comments below. There's a lot of things that I really liked and a few things that I didn't like. And the whole point of talking about our opinions and giving feedback is so that Treyarch can use that to make the Zombies experience even better between now and the full launch in November. So if that sounds good, be sure to stay tuned, get comfy, let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to make sure as many people as possible see this video and get that feedback over to Treyarch, then a like would be super appreciated. Jumping straight in, I think the first thing is just the fact that we even got a Zombies beta this year. It's something we've never had before, and it was an absolutely amazing time. Going forward, I think this is something they need to do for every game that has a third mode beyond just multiplayer. I think this has to be the standard, and for Zombies, I think it was extremely successful. The bite-sized version of the game that we got with Farm Survival was a fantastic time because due to how much of it was stripped back, it did feel a little bit like playing something more akin to classic Zombies than what we've had in the past few years. Straight away, despite Farm being quite a small play space, it's a great visual showcase for the full Ashes of the Dam map, and in terms of a visual perspective, it looks gritty and atmospheric like a Zombies map should be. There's been a lot of varied opinions over the years about the idea of color and the idea of lighting and the right balance of a map not being too bright where it doesn't feel like Zombies, or a map being too dark. But thank God the discussions that we were having last year about Liberty Falls can be absolutely put to rest this year with the presentation of Van Dorn Farm and Ashes of the Damned as a whole. Now, by no means am I saying it's perfect, but it is an absolute massive improvement over what we've had in almost every map in the last year for BO6. And I think there needs to be some praise as well for the minute details and design of all the different parts of the farm map, where we've got bodies hanging in the farm, we've got that family sitting around the table, got the lurking fog just outside of the zombie barriers, you've got the noise of that generator that's pumping power, you've got some really unique zombie models that are designed specifically for Van Dorn Farm. The ambient sounds and use of music with the round change, as well as bespoke music that plays only during the Ravager round, and then we get that old school Zombies guitar riff when the round changes after that. I think it's such a cool little touch. And then I think the cherry on the cake is the trap music. When you've activated that saw trap, you've got that creepy child laugh with that sort of techno beat going on. It's just such a weird juxtaposition, but it really works. That's just another more sort of minute details that I really appreciated in Farm Survival. But let's move into the meat and potatoes, which of course is the gameplay. And for the most part, I actually really liked the gameplay in this. Now, I think the biggest complaint and takeaway is that yes, this feels very much like Black Ops 6 Zombies DLC. I don't think there's any real way of escaping this, but I think Treyarch have done quite a few things here in the department of tweaking the gameplay to make it a bit more of a rewarding and more difficult experience in both good and bad ways. So, starting from the top, we still have that loadout system of spawning in with a weapon, but they have significantly changed how useful that loadout weapon is, where the salvage rates to upgrade that have gotten increasingly higher, encouraging you to get rid of that weapon in order to get a better one from the mystery box. And I think this is a net positive change. This is something that I am a fan of, and I used the mystery box more in this beta than I think I've used throughout all of BO6 Zombies for the last year. So I think they were successful with that change, and with that change also, it feels like you earn salvage a lot slower than you do in Black Ops 6 Zombies. And this was brought up recently by Donuts, who created a really great video. So shout out to him, and I highly advise you to go check out that video. It does seem that the salvage rates have been nerfed significantly, which makes it even harder for you to actually upgrade that loadout weapon and stick with it all the way till late game. Now, I definitely think there is a fine line here, and maybe Treyarch sort of crossed that line a little bit too far, leaning in towards it being a bit too nerfed. But I think until we get the full game, to get the full breadth of the score streaks and things craftable in the bench, we won't really know exactly what we would do with all the salvage that we could possibly gain anyway. But what I think felt quite refreshing about the survival beta is that there was very limited streaks in that crafting table. So combined with the small amounts of salvage that you gained and the very minimal amount of things that you could craft, it actually made the game feel a little bit more like classic Zombies, because you were relying solely on wonder weapons, then eventually a trap in order to progress progress to the higher rounds, which is strategies which people have been using ever since the olden days of classic zombies. Like, look at World at War Shinonuma, where you needed to use the flogger trap to get to crazy high rounds, as well as maps like Verrückt, and even as far as Black Ops 3 zombies having certain maps that also have a trap strategy. So that was really cool. Part of me does feel the trap might feel a little bit too powerful in terms of how long its duration lasts for. I think it has to be the longest lasting trap that we've ever had in Black Ops Zombies. Some of you might be going, John, please shut up, please stop talking. Inherently, I don't think the trap's duration is a bad thing, but I just feel like compared to any traps we've had before, it lasts a lot longer than any other trap. But hey, Treyarch might have already played around with the duration length of the trap where they got to a point where it is the way it is in the beta, and maybe the cooldown is the way that they've balanced it out. But I'm just talking about personal opinion here, guys, personal opinion. But I think what that comes down to as well is that the trap is very needed, because in the higher rounds, a lot of the weapons in Black Ops 7 Zombies just completely fall off damage wise, and I believe that every weapon in the game should be viable for you to get to a fairly high round in. We're talking like early to late round 40s onwards. Out of the 19 weapons available in the beta, minus the 2 wonder weapons, there really felt like there was only like 2 or 3 weapons that were significantly stronger than the other weapons. A lot of the weapons did feel quite weak, and I realized that part of that could be down to the fact that we just don't have augments in the beta, which I completely understand. And I feel like once we actually experience this game with augments, it's going to feel entirely different. I know that weapons will feel a lot better, but I feel like as a default, a majority of the weapons just felt a little bit weak. A little increase in that would be good. But again, you could also argue that, hey, that's classic zombies when your weapon gets so weak that you have to rely solely on wonder weapons. And I partly do agree with that. But I do think as a baseline, the guns should be able to carry you through past round 35 with relative ease. And I understand that, again, there aren't any augments in the beta, but I feel like Treyarch maybe should have thrown augments into the beta, because there could be a lot of people playing it that genuinely never played Black Ops 6 Zombies much and haven't unlocked any augments whatsoever. So giving them a little taste of what they could experience if they go ahead and play BO6, rank up those augments, bring them into BO7, or if they were just planning on buying BO7 and have no interest in playing BO6, so at least give them a little bit of an idea on what that gameplay experience will be like, because that is such a crucial system in the game that it just completely changes the way the game feels when there aren't any augments in there. So whilst I feel like most of the weapons felt quite weak, what I do want to give Treyarch some props for is the fact that going into this game, they have also added in weapons that get unique pack-a-punch abilities. Now, I do want to also say to Treyarch that I feel like they could have done more with the pack-a-punch abilities with these weapons, because only maybe 3 or 4 of them got some unique ones, but I'm happy that they still have that addition in there. And I did spend quite a while ranking up some of the more prominent and most powerful loadout weapons in the game to really test out all the different attachments, to get an idea of what attachments feel like inside of Black Ops 7 Zombies. And I think one of the biggest things that Treyarch could improve on with the attachments, as Black Ops 6 really didn't capitalize on it, was having more interesting and even zombie specific attachments for weapons. We've already had confirmation from Treyarch that weapon prestige attachments are going to be very much the meta for multiplayer and Warzone, so it would be amazing if they also had zombie specific traits as well, where the weapons can be even crazier and more unique in zombies than how they are in multiplayer and Warzone, instead of feeling the exact same, but just having their specific zombies damage values. But I did appreciate that some of the more unique PAP abilities included the LMG, the Mark 78, having the most insane movement speed, but it made you feel like you had stamina up even when you didn't, and one of the starting pistols, the Jaeger pistol, becoming a shotgun pistol when upgraded. I thought that was awesome. One of the snipers got a hip fire crosshair that made it super accurate to be able to just hip fire, which was really cool. There was an energy powered rocket launcher that was able to shoot like a 24 round clip without any reloading. I thought that was really cool. And I hope going into the full game that they just capitalize on that a little bit more and make that truly a unique experience. But I think the topic of weapons and the mystery box also comes hand in hand with the points system in Black Ops 7 Zombies. Now, nothing's changed here from Black Ops 6 Zombies, but I feel when you're thrown into a survival map like Farm, where the idea is that you are going to want to gain lots of points to be able to buy everything that you need to survive to the higher rounds like pack-a-punching, the perks from the Wonder Fizz, or even hitting the mystery box a lot, the current system really penalizes you in being able to hit the mystery box a lot, because eventually you're going to get to a point where you've traded your gun enough times, you've gotten a gun that you like from the box, but it's still not good enough to be able to get enough points with it to get you to a place where you can then use those points to upgrade and be in a scenario where there is not a deficit in the points. Maybe some of you would disagree here, and maybe this point will be alleviated entirely when we get our hands on the cursed mode to get that classic point system. But I felt like the current point system, it was just more obvious than ever before when you're on a limited experience like farm survival. Maybe there is still time for them to tweak the current point system slightly, and this could also intertwine a bit with the discussion before about weapons just being a little bit too weak in Black Ops 7 Zombies. But I feel there's definitely some refinement that they can make to all of those systems to make the point system not feel as restrictive as it did in the beta. Going back to the salvage argument, we also need to talk about the addition of Chompy, the rubbish bin Easter egg that's located here at the back of the map. And honestly, this is a godsend addition, and I am so happy that Treyarch put this in, because it actually adds a little bit of strategy into what you want to do and how you want to use your equipment and use your weapons in order to sacrifice them for more salvage. In the end, there were some great tactics being discovered, such as using 1,000 salvage to craft a monkey bomb, putting that in to get 1,000 back, and anytime you got a max ammo, it replenished those monkey bombs so that you could use them to get more salvage. And I think that is a great sort of counterpoint to the idea of there being less salvage overall in the game, as that's sort of a mitigation, and it's more of a tactical mitigation. But it honestly was one of my favorite parts of the experience, because it added this extra little tactic, which could also reward you with a ray gun, which completely changed up the classic experience, but it's a completely like optional thing that you don't have to engage with at all. But if you want to and try your luck, then it's there, and I really liked that. But I think in broader terms, we now need to talk about the gameplay experience, as well as the low round, the mid round, and the high round experience. Because it's clear that Treyarch have made a real effort to try and tone down the amount of special enemies that we have going into those late 10s to 20s. And I'm really happy with the way they've tuned this, because the Xersa special enemy is genuinely a real threat. And I am really happy with the way this has been implemented, because just like the days of Black Ops 2 and 3 with a really menacing special enemy that is a real pain to deal with, we finally have that back again. And the sort of unpredictability of the Xersa, as well as its attacks, I just really love the way that they've designed this. I think it looks visually amazing. I love all of the different attacks that it has, and I genuinely think this is one of the best special enemies that we've had for a really long time. I have seen some critique online that it might be a bit too overpowered, and it might need a little bit of a nerf in terms of how much damage it does to you. I definitely agree with the arguments of in the higher rounds, if you have no armor and you get hit by this, you immediately go down, so you lose a whole 250 health, which I think is maybe slightly unfair. Maybe that could be retuned. Everything else about the encounter with the Xersa, I think, is in the right spot. And I also really love the Ravager rounds. I love that these are a very, very intense special round when you get into the higher rounds, but they are no cakewalk. They are genuinely really difficult, and people have had to come up with their own sort of tactics to take these on in the higher rounds to ensure that they survive. I think on a fundamental level, the implementation and design and the way that they act feels very old school Zombies, in where this is a very annoying enemy to deal with, but not so annoying that it completely puts you off playing the map, unlike something like Transit with the Denizens. These guys are very annoying because they will go around and actually like eat up equipment that's lying around, but if you take advantage of that and notice when they turn purple, you can take them out, where you will have some extra salvage and points drop from them, turning unwanted equipment into salvage and points, which is very, very cool. But on the negative side, these guys have a very cunning, annoying feature where after they've done that 3 times, they will then run to a location on the map, clap their little monkey symbols, and then disappear completely, which on a special round, if it's the final one left in the round, more times than not, you will not be able to find this thing in time to get the max ammo. And I think Treyarch have designed this very, very well, but I would also argue that I think this needs to be tweaked slightly so that there is a bit more of a chance for you to find that Ravager and get that max ammo before it disappears. I think it's not quite obvious enough on the mini-map if you're using it on where that Ravager is, but maybe also the sound of the symbols could be a lot more louder in volume so that people can find that and take it out before it disappears. But I like that rather than it just being an annoying special enemy, it actually has some utility and benefit that you can take advantage of as well. And this might be a little bit controversial, but I actually liked the fact that the crafting table had very minimal score streaks, because we saw that the meta for high rounds was not to use score streaks necessarily, but to take advantage of the wonder weapon damage as well as using the trap. Treyarch have made a big conscious effort to make the high rounds to be a lot more difficult than they were in Black Ops 6. And the way they've done that is that they've made the zombies hit you for a lot more damage in the higher rounds. In turn, they've reduced the amount of sprinters that you have in the high rounds, so not every zombie is a super sprinter now. You also are not spammed with a multitude of elite zombie Zersa bears and Ravagers as well. It's just every few rounds you get that Zersa, you get the Ravagers most rounds, and I think that the high round gameplay in BO7 definitely felt more rewarding and a little bit more challenging than Black Ops 6. But again, that could be down to the lack of augments, the lack of some super OP score streaks like mutant injection, and I feel that Treyarch have a good grip on the high round experience, but I feel there is still a little bit more work to be done. I think the elephant in the room is what happened at round 40 onwards, Treyarch. Why on earth did you throw doppelgasts once around for no reason whatsoever? This just feels like Treyarch were like, right, this zombies high round is just not quite difficult enough, so let's just throw in this obnoxious special enemy as well with no real rhyme or reason and just have the players deal with it. I don't think that was the right approach. It just kind of feels extremely random, and it just doesn't suit Black Ops 7 zombies when everything else we're coming up against is completely new and unique. It's things we haven't dealt with before, and then they go ahead and throw in an enemy from the previous game. Like, can we just not do that? My worry is that with the other survival maps for Ashes of the Dam coming after launch, they might do a similar thing, but instead of it being the doppelgast, it would be a different enemy type, like perhaps the Klaus robots that we got at the end of the Reckoning, because one of the sort of short videos from COD Next did show a Klaus robot in one of the Ashes of the Dam POIs, and I feel like they're going to have it so each of the survival maps has their own unique special enemy, as well as the Zersa and the Ravager. There is an argument to be made that the damage that the armored zombies do to you in the high rounds might be a little bit too extreme, as you can literally go down in 2 or 3 hits, and with the zombies being super aggressive, obviously that is a real danger. And again, there's that fine line balancing act argument of they clearly want to make the high rounds harder, but how exactly do they do that? And I think the tweaking of the sprinters is definitely the correct decision there, so big props to them. But I don't know if necessarily about the damage increase being so substantial is the way forward. Maybe it's something that we just need to test on other survival maps and the Ashes of the Damned experience to experience it in a multitude of different ways before coming to a finalized conclusion on that, because I do think the difficulty of the gameplay was actually a lot better and a lot more interesting than Black Ops 7 Zombies. But I just think that there could be some more things that are just slightly fine-tuned and tweaked. And let me know your thoughts on what you agree and disagree with there in the comments. And this is something I personally experienced. Maybe you guys didn't feel it, and maybe you will counter this argument here. But I did feel that there was maybe less armor drops in the higher rounds than what we got in Black Ops 6. So that also felt a little bit more punishing, and maybe that just goes back into the difficulty curve that they are trying to have in BO7 to make high rounds harder. Then I've seen people have the arguments of, well, that trap was just so OP that despite the actual game overall being harder, because the trap was so powerful and lasted for so long, it actually felt like it was an easier high round because there was actually less tactic being used there, where there wasn't a meta with a wonder weapon being used or having to skillfully optimize using XYZ. But I definitely think the gameplay overall and the tactics used are a lot more refreshing than the meta of using mutant injection constantly throughout your high round game. I think the biggest critiques from the Black Ops 7 Zombies beta is of course the fact that it just felt more like Black Ops 6 Zombies DLC than it feeling like a brand new game, and also that the majority of the new things that they added into BO7 are mostly things that are things we got many years ago. We're talking about toxic growth as a field upgrade, we're talking about the fireworks ammo mod. We got an absolute W with the Wisp T perk being a brand new perk, but even that is a variation of a perk that we got from Black Ops 4 Zombies. I don't necessarily see anything wrong with Treyarch bringing back stuff that we got in older games back into the more modern zombies, but I feel like if they're going to do it, it needs to be something that really like fits the theme of the map or the game as a whole. So it just adds an extra level of immersion. Like if we got a new field upgrade that incorporated the dark ether, I know we've got Shadow Rift, which could be argued to be exactly that, but something that's more akin to just being something ridiculously cool and different, I think would be really nice. I personally thought that Wisp Tea was a really cool addition of a perk. I do realize that it is going to be so much better once we get the augments. It was a perk that first impressions I really didn't care for, and then the more I used it, the more I was like, okay, this is actually kind of useful. I do like it. Toxic Growth, I only got to use maybe a handful of times, and I thought it was okay. And the Fireworks Ammo mod is exactly what it says on the tin. In the beta, Napalm Burst was the absolute meta because it was the weakness for the Xursa Bear, so there was no reason to really use anything else. Then we also got given like 5 out of the 6 brand new Gobblegums to use in the game, and I think a majority of the additions that we have are actually really good Gobblegums and are genuinely useful. But I think Treyarch need to really take a second look at Power Vacuum. It was so OP in Black Ops 3 and it just works awfully in this game. I don't know what happened, but I genuinely got more drops when I wasn't using Power Vacuum than versus when I was. That's my only complaint with the Gobblegums in the beta. The rest of them worked really well. I'm very happy that Aftertaste now works very well for a solo game experience. Treyarch nerfed shopping free and gave us a gift card, which I think actually is a great alternative because there isn't a time frame when you spend the 30,000 points, and for a big map like Ashes of the Damned, that's going to be really, really useful. And overall, I'm just really happy that Treyarch actually let us use Gobblegums in the beta and also use the brand new ones. But I do think it was a real shame for Treyarch to not have Curse in some element within this beta, because we didn't really get any new details about it at COD Next ahead of what they've already spoken about. I genuinely think it would have been great if we could showcase Cursed gameplay at COD Next. But when Cursed is such a big sort of riding point on the game to have more classic elements as fundamental gameplay, there is a lot of players that are holding out on waiting until they can see that before they pick up the game. And I think it would have been a really great way to introduce it and get people sort of used to how different the gameplay is, and allow us to give them feedback on what we like and dislike so that they can get this perfectly right on the launch of the game next month. The last and final thing that I'll mention about the beta, and it's just the biggest gripe that I have with the game, and I think it's fundamentally the biggest gripe everyone has, is the HUD. Now, since my original video where I discussed my thoughts after playing Farm at Treyarch back in August, the HUD was my biggest complaint, and the HUD hasn't changed in any way, shape or form. It's exactly the same HUD as we've got in multiplayer, and by no means is it the worst HUD we've ever had, but when we've had conversations for over a year now about the HUD in zombies not really feeling like zombies or looking like zombies, Treyarch really have the chance here to actually improve the HUD, and they have announced that there are going to be several HUD presets. They've leaked to be BO3 Shadows of Evil and BO3 Ether maps, which are incredible. Let's not get it twisted here. That is fantastic. It's more like a band-aid that's being put on a wound instead of just actually dealing with the problem at hand. If the original default HUD was improved just to make it more zombified at its default, I think people would have no real gripes whatsoever and would really help with that initial sort of tone and immersion that people are looking for in modern zombies. Now, I know the arguments, you can turn off everything if you want to. You can turn off the health bars, the minimap, the compass, you can turn all that off. I understand that, but I don't think that players should have to go into menus and do all that just to get what looks to be a more cleaner experience. I think that Treyarch need to really listen to the feedback and maybe by default have some of that stuff turned off with the option for people to turn it on. I personally love having the health bars and the damage numbers so I can see how strong or weak my weapon is. Just the layout of everything, especially with that bottom right corner where we see an actual like overlay icon of the weapon we're holding, I just don't think it's necessary. Even with those Black Ops 3 zombies HUDs that we're going to be getting, it still doesn't actually physically change or remove any of the HUD elements. It just adds an overlay on them rather than them actually being resized and repositioned and what most of us are looking for being more simplified, where it actually looks like the game that the HUD is from. But that's my 2 cents on it. If you guys agree or disagree, I would love to know your thoughts down below in the comment section. But overall, I really enjoyed enjoyed my time on the Black Ops 7 Zombies beta. I thought it was a very successful beta. I know there were so many people that jumped in and played it, especially to get that round 50 Dark Ops. I think that was a really good idea for them to put that in, as it got a lot of people playing, and it did feel more akin to a classic Zombies experience than anything that we've had in Cold War or Black Ops 6. My only real gripes is with the weapon damage, of course the lack of augments, which I think should have been in the beta to give people a feel on how much of a difference that makes the gameplay. Gripes with the point system, some tweaks potentially being needed with the salvage, though I'm not quite sure, and a missed opportunity for cursed mode to be in there as well. Hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, be sure to let me know your thoughts. Drop a thumbs up if you've made it all the way to the end, and be sure to subscribe because there will be tons more Black Ops 7 Zombies videos coming out on the channel on the road to launch, including a ton of meta weapons, a ton of extra stuff that they're going to be dropping, giving us new reveals, news, gameplay, and I'd hate for you to miss it, so be sure to check all of that out when it drops, and I'll see you very soon.